All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're tackling something I think we all experience, but might not fully grasp. The link between stress and your heart.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
We've got this really interesting article from the Surrey Cardiovascular Clinic blog by Dr. Edward Leatham, a consultant cardiologist.
Okay.
It's called How Does Stress Affect Your Heart? And it's packed with real-world cases and a deep dive into how stress really impacts your ticker.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating how we often just think about stress like it's just a mental thing.
Right.
But in reality, it's a whole chain reaction in our bodies, and it can have some pretty serious consequences for our heart health.
It's not just in your head. So let's unpack this a little bit. Everyone knows that feeling. You're facing a huge deadline. You're about to give a presentation, and suddenly your heart's racing, palms are sweaty. What's actually going on in our bodies right then?
Well, that's your body's ancient fight-or-flight response kicking in. Think back to our ancestors. If they encountered a predator, like a saber-toothed tiger, their bodies would flood with adrenaline.
Right, gotta run.
Right. Heart rate and blood pressure would skyrocket. They'd get a surge of glucose for that quick burst of energy to either fight or flee.
Survival mode.
It's all about survival.
But, our stressors today look a little different.
Right.
We're not exactly dodging tigers on our way to work in the morning.
Exactly. The problem is that our bodies haven't quite caught up to modern life.
Yeah.
That never-ending email inbox, traffic jams, pressure at work, juggling family life.
Right.
Our body still reacts like we're facing a life or death situation.
Even though we're just, stuck in a meeting that's running long.
Exactly.
So it's like our internal alarm system is stuck on high alert. Dr. Leatham points out that this constant state of fight or flight, even at low levels, can actually wear down our cardiovascular system over time. What does that actually look like in reality?
Well, think about it like this. Imagine your heart is like an engine that's constantly revving at high speed. Eventually, that's going to lead to some serious wear and tear. Chronic stress, we know, contributes to high blood pressure, increases inflammation in your arteries, and can even make your blood more likely to clot.
Oh, wow.
These are all major risk factors for heart disease.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not just these long-term effects, right?
Right.
Dr. Leatham mentions that stress can actually mimic symptoms of serious heart problems, too.
Absolutely. People come into the clinic all the time with things like palpitations, chest pains, shortness of breath. All of these things could be caused by stress, but they could also be warning signs of something more serious.
It was scary.
That's why it's so important, so crucial to get checked out by a doctor if you're experiencing these symptoms.
Don't just brush it off.
But it also highlights how important it is to understand how much stress might be playing a role in your overall health.
Yeah, so it's sort of a two-pronged approach. You got to get checked out, but you also need to take stock of your own life and what your stress levels are like.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like we really need to be paying more attention to these subtle signs that our body is sending us, right?
Absolutely. And Dr. Latham has this fascinating case study in the article that really drives this point home. He had a patient, a businessman in his 70s, and this man's blood pressure was basically a mirror reflecting his stress levels. He decided to retire, travel the world, basically live a stress-free life.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Right.
What happened to his blood pressure? Did it just, disappear?
It plummeted.
Hey,
He was able to completely stop taking his blood pressure medication. Retirement was the cure.
Wow. So it seemed like retirement was the magic cure.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling there's a twist.
Oh, there is. Sadly, his peaceful retirement was pretty short-lived. His family business hit some tough times, and he felt obligated to go back and help sort things out. And guess what? Almost immediately, his blood pressure shot right back up.
Oh, no. Even higher than before, I bet.
Even higher than before.
Wow. That's a pretty dramatic example of just how powerful stress can be.
It really is. He ended up needing multiple medications at much higher doses just to get his blood pressure under control. And what's even more concerning is that this case kind of suggests that those periods of intense stress might have long-lasting, maybe even permanent effects on our cardiovascular system.
Like it does damage that can't be undone.
Potentially, yeah.
So even if stress isn't the root cause, like the sole cause of, let's say, hypertension, it can definitely play a major role in its development and severity.
Absolutely, and that's why understanding how to manage stress is so crucial.
Right.
Not just for our mental well-being, but for our heart health as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about blood pressure, but Dr. Leatham also mentions another interesting factor, glucose.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to admit, I always thought glucose was mainly a concern for people with diabetes.
That's a pretty common misconception, actually. What's fascinating is that even those of us without diabetes can experience these spikes in blood glucose, especially when we're stressed out.
Really?
Remember that fight or flight response we talked about earlier?
Uh-huh.
Part of that response is a surge of glucose going right into your bloodstream.
Okay.
It's meant to give you that quick energy boost to deal with the threat.
So it's like our body is basically pumping us full of sugar to prepare for, like a battle that never actually happened.
Exactly. And the problem is, even though those spikes are usually temporary, research is starting to suggest that they could be harmful to the heart over time, especially if they're happening all the time.
Interesting.
Just think about it. Your heart is already working overtime to pump blood, and now it has to deal with all this extra sugar rushing through your system. It's like adding fuel to a fire that's already burning way too hot. That makes me think about the growing use of continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs. I know they're helpful for people with diabetes, but could they also be beneficial for just understanding how stress impacts our blood sugar, even if we don't have diabetes?
Absolutely. CGMs are giving us a whole new level of insight into how our bodies respond to not just food, but also stress, even lack of sleep.
Wow.
It's like having this window into your metabolic processes, revealing these fluctuations we weren't even aware of before.
So it's about getting this really personalized picture of what's going on inside our bodies.
Right.
We're not just relying on these general guidelines anymore. We're actually seeing how our individual systems react in real time.
Exactly. And when we connect this back to stress, imagine being able to see exactly how that stressful meeting or that late night email is impacting your blood sugar.
Oh, that's a scary thought.
Right. That kind of data can be incredibly empowering, I think. It definitely makes you think twice about sending those late night emails or having that extra cup of coffee before bed.
Okay, so we've talked about the impact of stress on blood pressure and glucose levels. But what about its connection to more serious heart conditions, like atrial fibrillation? Dr. Leatham touches on that as well.
Yeah, atrial fibrillation, or AFib for short, it's the most common type of irregular heartbeat. And it can be pretty serious. While the exact causes of AFib aren't always clear, there's growing evidence that there's a connection between stress and those adrenaline and glucose spikes we were talking about earlier.
So it's almost like this domino effect where stress leads to these surges, which could then trigger these irregular heart rhythms.
That's a really good way to put it. Of course, not every episode of AFib is caused by stress.
Right.
But a lot of patients report experiencing AFib during times of high anxiety or after poor sleep. It's definitely something to be mindful of. So it sounds like stress management becomes extra crucial, especially for people who are prone to AFib. And speaking of stress management, Dr. Leatham does offer some potential solutions in the article. He mentions beta blockers as one option. Can you explain how those work?
Sure. Beta blockers are a type of medication that basically blocks the effects of adrenaline on your heart.
Okay.
They can help control heart rate, manage high blood pressure, and reduce the frequency of those stress-related extra heartbeats that some people get.
So it's almost like they're acting as a shield against the physiological effects of stress.
You could say that, yes, but it's really important to remember that medication is only one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Dr. Leatham really emphasizes a holistic approach to stress management. He talks about the importance of lifestyle changes and finding techniques to actually address the root cause of your stress, not just masking the symptoms.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to just put a Band-Aid on the problem. You actually want to try and fix it.
Exactly.
And I'm intrigued by this concept of a stress management toolbox that he talks about. He recommends such a wide range of techniques, everything from mindfulness and yoga to therapy, and even just getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
What do you think makes these approaches so effective?
Well, what I find fascinating about these techniques is that they work on different levels. They can help regulate your nervous system, reduce the production of stress hormones, and even equip you with better coping mechanisms for dealing with stress. It's not just about relaxation.
Right.
It's about building resilience and changing your relationship with stress.
That's really interesting. So let's break down some of these tools a little bit. Mindfulness seems to be everywhere these days.
It is.
But what does it actually mean in the context of heart health?
Mindfulness is really about bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment. It could be through, formal meditation practices, but it could also be as simple as taking a few deep breaths and noticing the sensations in your body.
So it's about training your mind to be more aware, less reactive, and to really just stay grounded in the here and now, rather than getting caught up in worries or anxieties.
Exactly. And the benefits for heart health are becoming more and more clear.
Interesting.
Studies are showing that practicing mindfulness can actually lower your heart rate, reduce blood pressure, and even improve something called heart rate variability, which is basically a measure of your heart's ability to adapt to change.
Oh, wow.
So it's like we're giving our nervous system a break, allowing it to reset and recharge.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about things like yoga and Tai Chi? Those always seem more about flexibility and relaxation to me.
Well, they definitely promote flexibility and relaxation, but there's also a growing body of research linking these practices to better blood pressure control and improved heart rate variability.
Really?
It seems like the combination of gentle movement, controlled breathing, and mental focus has a really profound impact on our stress response.
So again, it's about that mind-body connection. You're not just working out your muscles, you're actually calming your nervous system at the same time.
Precisely. And of course, therapy or counseling can also be incredibly beneficial, especially for people who are dealing with chronic stress or anxiety.
Absolutely. It's about giving people the tools and support they need to understand and manage their stress more effectively. Sometimes we need a little help to figure out how to navigate those overwhelming emotions.
For sure. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, can be very effective in helping people identify those negative thought patterns and develop healthier coping mechanisms for dealing with stress.
So we've got this whole arsenal of stress-busting techniques at our disposal, but how do we actually know how stressed we are? Stress can be such a slippery concept to measure, right?
You're absolutely right. There's no one-size-fits-all test for stress.
Okay.
Everyone experiences and responds to stress differently.
So we can't just, take a stress test at the doctor's office and get a concrete number.
Not yet, at least. But there are some promising technologies emerging. For example, wearable heart rate monitors can measure heart rate variability, which can give you a pretty good indication of your stress levels.
Right.
And we talked about CGMs earlier, which can show those stress-induced glucose spikes.
It's amazing how technology is giving us a much deeper understanding of this complex interplay between our minds and bodies. And I've even heard about research being done on continuous cortisol monitoring, so that would track your stress hormone levels throughout the day.
Yeah, that's an exciting area of research. Imagine being able to see exactly when and why your cortisol levels spike, allowing you to make adjustments in real time. That could really revolutionize how we manage stress.
So we've got all this amazing technology giving us insights into our bodies, but Dr. Leatham also highlights some really cool tools specifically for the cardiology world. Things like Preventis ECG patches and Actia wristbands. What can you tell us about those?
These are pretty incredible advancements when it comes to personalized heart care. The Preventis patch is a super lightweight, wearable ECG monitor that can track your heart rhythm for days on end. It can even detect those sneaky, intermittent arrhythmias that might be linked to stress, the kind that could easily be missed during a routine visit.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like those Holter monitors they used to use,
Yeah,
but much more user-friendly and less intrusive.
exactly. Much easier to wear. And then there's the Actia wristband, which provides continuous blood pressure monitoring. Can you imagine being able to see how your blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day, how it changes after meals, during exercise, even while you're sleeping?
Wow, that's amazing. It would be like having this constant blood pressure diary right there on your wrist.
It really is. And that data is so valuable for understanding the impact of stress on your heart health and making those necessary lifestyle adjustments.
It really paints a picture of a future where we're all walking around with these high-tech health monitors, giving us constant feedback and empowering us to take control of our well-being.
And it's not just about individual empowerment. Think about the possibilities for research and prevention. This kind of data on a larger scale could help us identify trends and develop more effective treatment strategies for heart disease.
It seems like we're entering a whole new era in heart health, fueled by technology and a deeper understanding of this complex interplay between our minds, our bodies, and really our overall well-being. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And Dr. Leatham really nailed it when he said, knowledge is power. The more we understand about how stress affects our hearts, the more equipped we are to make choices that protect our health.
So true. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of stress and heart health, it's clear that this conversation is far from over. It's not about living in fear of stress or trying to avoid it altogether. It's about understanding its impact, building resilience, and having the tools to manage it effectively.
It's all about finding that balance, recognizing that our hearts are intricately connected to our thoughts, our emotions, and our experiences.
A big thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, be kind to yourselves, manage that stress, and keep exploring the fascinating world of health and well-being.